Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The old technologies, which we often think of as being antiquated, are nothing of the sort. The technologies that we had less than 150 years ago, and this number is quite important because this is when it all started changing, round about the mid 18th century, when what you and I now have come to understand as the Olympians took over the operations of Tara, or terrestrial. Since we released the information that Tara Australis is not a theoretical framework, but one that existed about 120 years ago, and all knowledge of it in the general public's minds began to be collapsed. In other words, the knowledge that they had of the existence of these other cultures with some incredible technologies was subdued, and a whole heap of new technologies that were highly destructive, revolving around the oil production, revolving around toxification of men and women, of medication. The list, of course, is just quite staggering, and that also includes in construction. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when you look out of your window and you see a building that is, say, 200-300 years old, those technologies that made those buildings are very different in construction as how we have been told, or what is known by way of perceived wisdom or perceived education. We now know that we have to recalibrate every single thing that we have ever been taught in school. Even how we calculate, or even how we read and write. Of course, we already know through David Wayne Miller's technology that the language itself was toxified to accompany a toxic technology like burning of so-called fossil fuel. But of course, in Russia, if you spoke about if you spoke about fossil fuel, they'll laugh at you because they are not fossil fuel. They are produced by the earth. And coal, of course, is not fossilized tree. Yes, you will have fossilized tree in it, but it's essentially oil, residue oil that is being dried out. Like an oil painting sitting on the shelf when it's been freshly painted, for it to dry takes about 2-3 weeks. And it is the same with these coal and what they call black gold. Let's come back to construction. Let's take a church like Notre Dame, or any of the churches or buildings in central London or Washington, D.C. We are told, just like the lie of fossil fuel, that these were sandstones cut, engineered, put in place, taken from quarries. That no other type of construction ever took place. Turns out, on the back of the research and some wonderful people that I've come across on YouTube, which I will be sharing with you, that threw a whole beautiful light on how these things are. You see, ladies and gentlemen, you have concrete, and that only kind of came about when the Olympians, what is known as the Committee of 300, started to take over by consecutive generation of toxifying human beings' minds into locking them down into thinking that the world is flat or the world is even round. You will find quite often the people that believe in these things, whether it's flat, round, triangle, whatever it is, don't really have very much knowledge as to why it's round, why it's a globe, why it's flat, why it's anything. The ignorance prevails. And on the back of this type of ignorance, this consecutive generation after generation of ignorance, and feeding into the ignorance where ignorance is rewarded, to say nothing about nothing, but rather recite the conventional wisdom that makes no sense. So it turns out these very large pieces of stone weren't really cut. They weren't cement, because we only think of cement as being cement, sand, and the other gravel, the aggregates, as it were, which make up concrete, or that makes up the stuff that you need to join bricks together, commonly called cement. And the old technology of the Romans having concrete available that lasted for thousands of years, they got everybody, including the construction industry, believing that technology had just simply disappeared with the Romans. Well, since the Corona period, since I've revealed the information that the old order of things, which is the corruption of human beings and the corruption or wanton corruption of men and women, that has come to an end. That's come to an end on a geological basis. That's come to an end on a political basis, judicial basis, and executive positions as well. And you will see a renewal of these incredibly highly effective old technologies come bearing again. So let's go back to this word. We now know that concrete, because it only has a 99-year lifespan, that's its lifespan, which is also the lease of a feudal system. It's a 99-year lease. And technologies or methods that revolved around the lease of a country or entire regions was also engineered and calibrated in terms of lifespan with the running out of that lease. So one of the technologies that they had is what they call geopolymers. And I didn't come across this just by myself. Other people educated me on YouTube, people that do wonderful jobs. And these geopolymers, ladies and gentlemen, is essentially just crushed marble or crushed whatever stones that they are from the earth. And they are bound together like very similar to whitewashes. Lime and chalk, it has a chemical reaction and a bonding takes place, and you have essentially whitewash. It becomes very hot, very similar to concrete. But these geopolymers, ladies and gentlemen, turned out to be very simple to produce and very easy to construct with. You could make 20, 30 tons of that in any place that you want by just simply mining the earth and applying water to it. And what you have is a material that will set apparently 300-400% minimum stronger than concrete, but with a lifespan of over 1,000 or more years. Now, like concrete, what happens with concrete is it takes 99 years to solidify. It's workable, yes, within like few months, but it constantly gets harder and harder over a 99-year period. And after a 99-year period, the concrete begins to deteriorate. So its lifespan technically is about 198 years. But after about 120 years, this degradation cannot be relied upon because it becomes unstable, so you can't use it in dams and things. So what they did is that the old technologies that built these churches and these old buildings that were there for hundreds of years, like City of London, for example, was only recently taken over by the Committee of 300. They essentially herited it, by overthrowing the old way of life, as it were, what we have now come to understand as being Tara Australis and Tara or terrestrial, or to the Tartarians. And they, of course, took credit for all the things that were already in place. The Committee of 300, the Olympians, which are the names and bank accounts of your gods that you worship, are narcissistic and psychopaths, which means they take credit for everything, things that they had nothing to do with. And of course, when things go wrong, they always blame other people. The most favorite people to blame is the general public, to saying that, you've spent too much. You forced us to go to war. You believed us that such and such a guy was the bad man. You allowed us to convince you that Osama bin Laden exists. You allowed us to convince you that the IRA were terrorists. These people who are 100% narcissistic and psychopaths took advantage and took credit for all the buildings and all the things that were around them, including tunnels, engineering techniques, and they put in place of those incredible technologies that are engineered to fail after 99 years. So it turns out that these buildings, castles, were not cut stone. They were molds, and these molds can be remolded again and again to build incredible structures, structures of incredible design as well. And they weren't carved out, they were molded. And they were very easy to construct. Turns out the places of antiquity, even the Bosnian pyramids, as it were, could be constructed in a relatively more simplistic than we are told. In doing so, in putting light to this type of technology, and it's quite vast, and I'm only choosing to speak about one or two different things, which is the geology of it, the geopolymers, as it were. What it does, it demystifies old world constructions into something that is far more accessible to our minds. Because what is the golden rule when you're doing anything? Simplify, simplify, and simplify. The perceived education is to do the opposite, is to mystify, mystify, and mystify. And in doing so, it's so easy to rob people of what we now have come to understand, is that these are just molds. I say the word mold, they're molded into place. These huge bricks could be molded there and then on top of each other. And their strength is quite incredible. There's a place that I frequent to check what the flag protocols are in England. That's called Waltham Abbey. It's a church that's over 100 years old, and that used to be the old treasury. Okay, it's a massive place. And I look at it and I think to myself, well, look, it's obvious that this has been built upon existing technologies. One that has been deliberately mystified to mislead people into thinking that only men and women of incredible engineering and mathematical skills can put these things together. And that may well be by our today's standard. You see, what is challenging for most men and women is when they see a cell phone. It's an incredible piece of technological kit. But the man or woman that is holding that technology, this cell phone, believe that they are part and package of the knowledge of what goes into building these things. Because of this, it's difficult for the average man and a woman to be able to realize how incredibly dummified and how incredibly engineered they have become in the realm of stupidity. You see, what men and women or what human beings cannot explain, they make excuses for. Oh, it must have been built by, very incredibly super intelligent human beings, even aliens, anything but to just simply admit, well, I don't know how they built it. I remain ignorant on the subject. They don't. What they do is they confabulate into believing they know how a cell phone works or how a church was constructed. The beginning of wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to access this type of knowledge is to know and to admit that you either know or you don't. And when somebody checks your knowledge, people get upset. Religious people do that all the time because they convolute a belief with a piece of knowledge. They are not together. They are different domains. The reason why you believe in what you believe is because you have no basis of knowledge for it. That's what a belief is. A better word would be faith, but you find most religious people have no faith. That's why they take to religion. So, it is challenging for people to just simply say, I do not know what that flag is doing flying on top of that church in Waltham Abbey. I do not know how the construction took place of the pyramids, whether that be Bosnian or the crystal pyramids that are all around our oceans. Don't know how they took place. Don't even know why there are pyramids under the ocean. Don't know. Haven't got a clue how they would even go about doing such things. I do not know even if there was an ocean there to begin with. But human beings are very good at confabulating. And in doing so, they accept all manner of lies into their lives. You see, round about the middle of the 18th century, when the Olympians began to take over and create what is known as state, like state of California, as opposed to the territory of California, and the state of England, the state of United Kingdom as opposed to the territory of England. A whole new script that encompasses education, publications, universities, the religions, all of them were rewritten. New publications were also published, saying that they were published like 300-400 years previous to the mid-18th century. Bibles, religious books of all nature, they were rewritten. And even new religions were created to oversee and remain subdued under the new masters, which we now know as being the Olympians. Well, they are dead and gone now. They got no standing because they are pathological liars. And the lifespan of a narcissist or a psychopath is very limited, and their ability to lie is also very limited. Hence, you have the feudal leasing system of 99 years when they get caught and try to escape to other continents and set up shop again, as it were. Well, there isn't many places that they can go, and they've been caught out on it. Okay? So, in terms of medication, in terms of how our biology works, biology is the study of life, how cell phones work and how these magnificent structures were created, and the way that it was robbed of people's knowledge to be able to access that, as realizing, no, it wasn't the Olympians, no, it wasn't the principalities, no, it was not the city-states, it was a different civilization. But I do not add the mysticism into it. I demystify it by saying when a highly pernicious organization like the Committee of 300 take over, the level of destruction that they come in with is also very covert in its manner. Their ability to lie and steal openly without the general public even realizing is tremendous. And because human beings will always confabulate, they will always blame somebody else, or they'll make it up, as it were. They rob themselves of this type of knowledge. Coming back to geopolymers, you as a simple homesteader or a home buyer or a homemaker, what would you do with this very simple construction if you knew that geopolymers existed and that you don't need to bake bricks and that you don't need to create cement? You can cast your own foundation, and with the use of vibrating technologies, you can dig the earth very easily. Those tools are still available. And that you realize that you don't need the doctors with their death by medication tools, as it were. That's what it's called, death by medication, being one of the largest killers on our planet. When you knew all of these things, what use would you have for wanting to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds buying in bricks and foundation and so on and so forth, when these magnificent structures don't use any of those sort of tools? So that type of lie is becoming more and more extinct. That ability to lie to people all the time, to all the people, has come to an end. About 10 years ago, very few people knew what a psychopath or a narcissist was. They didn't know that such a condition existed. Highly toxic people. And yet I look like 10 years later, and the pioneers of that education system were saying it will catch momentum, and before you know it, it will be in every day's vocabulary to know that there are subspecies that exist parallel to us, i.e. the principalities, the royal families, the politicians, who have all proven themselves to be pathological liars. Pathology means diseased. Disease meaning to be at unease, as it were. Take a typical example like evolution. Evolution itself was created as a way of getting you to believe and preoccupying so much of your mental power into thinking that you had a descendancy similar to the primates, as it were. Even the word primates means no mate. The word thrive, we thrive on this planet. Thrive means the hive, it means the life. Was changed, even though it's an adverb-verb scenario. The hive, thrive, that's what it means. It's THE joined together with life. Germanic word, I believe. And words like survival was put into place. Survival, S-U-R, means no, as in human means no human. And VIVE means to live. It means no life. And your subconscious mind, in your higher functions of your mind, knows this. So when you touch upon old age technologies and try to work it out, something as simple and what looks like as an educational piece, like Darwinism interferes with your thinking. It interferes in your thinking to realize, well, perhaps there's setting mechanisms for this block of stone which the churches were built on, or even the old buildings, are different. You won't think like that because you will be thinking in terms of survivalism. And that is all introduced, as well as Freudianism. They were all introduced to corrupt you and to preoccupy your mind with nonsensical things. You have thrive and you have survival. The word in itself is very explanatory. One refers to no life in passe, parts of a word, and the other one refers to something that is thriving. So a whole new language system was brought in for you to partake and think in terms of survivalism, where your fellow man becomes your competitor. You look upon him as your competitor. You don't look upon your fellow man as a means by which to better yourself or to educate yourself or to be in partnership with. You look upon him as a competitor that you need to overthrow. I was studying recently, or revisiting, Nietzsche. And I'm thinking to myself, all these people that think that they have educated themselves on the back of this man. And I attack him not personally, but think about it. This is a man who is heralded as being a literary genius and a philosopher and so on and so forth, who was a headmaster, who was in love with his sister, but never managed to copulate with her, and who was a depressive and spent most of his latter years pretending to be mentally disturbed and sitting in a wheelchair where his sister is perpetually looking after him. Do you really need to take life lessons from such people that will take you into the deprivation of the human spirit, of what is in your genie, and get yourself educated by an obviously mentally disturbed individual? And so it is with your art as well. Life no longer became something of celebration. It became something twisted, something to shock and create shock value. And they call that artistry. Well, that's the artistry of psychopaths and narcissists. So these are some of the examples. So say, if you buy into this survivalism, you buy into books like The Selfish Gene. Do you guys know what a genie is? Do you know what a gene is? A gene is not a mythological thing. It's in every cell of your body. And that thing that is within the nucleus of your cell, in its trillions, has a quite extraordinary power over biology itself, which is over life. When academics come up with such philosophies like selfish gene, they're basically saying that your genie, because that's where the word comes from, your genie has been jinxed. In other words, it's diseased. It's gone into survival mode. The genie is fighting its way through life rather than celebrating. That's what you are given when you read these books, what are essentially ideological masturbation on the back of poisonous words like survival was supposed to thrive. And you know about these poison words like calling native Australians Aborigines, when AB, like abnormal, means means no normal. And then you call him Aborigine. So on the back of these masturbative words, these professors in these universities made a bloody good living. until David Wayne Miller came along and just pulled all those words right under their feet. In doing so, your ability to see these old technologies is coming forth. Some people on the internet call that the Great Awakening, or the Great Reset, at least economically. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when academics and scholastic masturbators portray their theoretical works and their dramatic works like drama as a point of philosophy, as well as a point of a fact, as it were, without actually even holding any water. If they're able to do that, then you are easily convinced that global warming takes place, which is a lie. And if you're not of the global warming people, they will convince you then there is global cooling taking place, which is also a lie. And if you buy into those two, then you can be sold the idea that there is climate control, which is not a lie. And that's how they walk you into accepting geological changing of our atmosphere and of our weather patterns, known as geoengineering chemicals. Because human beings, by their own confabulation, are rather foolhardy into believing global warming. Then the global warmers go to war with the global coolers, and when they are going to war, you'll have the toxic federal government that, if not kept in check, will create global climate control, like climate control in your car. And people just buy into it, just as they buy into everything else. I would like to show you a little presentation. Now, I'm going to go off subject, and the reason why I want to go off subject is because whether that's architecture or whether that's Terra Australis or any one of the old civilizations which are no longer theoretical, the Titans are no longer theoretical, just as I showed you. The mythological gods are not mythological, but do exist, and they got bank accounts, which is on my website. You see, this particular, I think he's a professor, is pointing out that people are actually foolhardy enough to ask for tax rises and getting the rich to pay more taxes, not realizing what stupidity that they are getting up to. There isn't a single rich person or even 1,000 rich people that can pay off any of the government debts, which was also generated by the privateers and then made liable by you. In other words, they spend it and make you liable. What he's pointing out here is that whenever poor people, which are also poor in mind, and I need to point this out, just because you are poor doesn't mean you're not going to be condemned for being stupid. Yeah. Your stupidity for asking tax rises just allows the rich to pay less. It is in fact you, just as the stupid poor people, and I'm being provocative as I can because I need to, ask for death sentences. Do you know who gets hung? It's themselves, the poor people. Look, every time you ask for something and pick up something that somebody else gave you to recite or to react against, like hang Osama bin Laden, you can't hang him because he doesn't exist. Or blame it on Biden, Joe Biden. Well, blame what on Joe Biden exactly? He's doing his very best to show you that he's not worth it. Did it ever occur to you to go and talk to his controllers? Yeah. Who are his controllers? Well, you'll start with the electoral college, because they're the ones that elect who you're going to vote for. Elect and vote. So he makes a very good discussion of how non-reactionary you have to be in order to see what really is happening. Okay, and this is about taxation, but not realizing that when you buy into survivalism or when you buy into petroleum jelly, you're essentially buying into this level of stupidity, that you are essentially buying into taxing yourself to death. You're doing it out of your own willful ignorance. Here, ladies and gentlemen, is a video, and I'm sorry I didn't have. I'll see if I can post these things on the comments section, but I've opened it up like a liked video, so as a result it's not showing who put it out. But this is a wonderful man that seems to have an East London accent. I don't know who he is, and he's put this video together, show you how these incredibly complex structures are not cut stone, they're not chiseled away, they're actually molds, like a concrete mold. Yeah, and that's how they got these constructions. And here they're showing you how it's actually done. It's very simple. It's a sludge, which is very easy to mine, to pick up. You can do it from the earth around you. Okay, and you put a little bit of bicarb in it, which is a natural occurring mineral. The Egyptians used to put bicarb and almond oil to create smokeless candles, in which they used to do their paintings inside the pyramids or inside the tombs, because there's no soot. Yeah, so these types of simple technologies were hidden from you in order to buy into candles and fuels that produced a lot of toxification, because they needed to make as much money off of you before their 99-year lease ran out. Yeah, and I've released this information. The lease on the US, what is known as the state of California, Mexico, Texas, that's run out. Yeah, if one of you want to contact me and to do an interview with me, I'll give you the details of how Texas, Mexico are all New Mexico, all going back to the old people that were there. Yeah, not Mexico. It's not going back to Mexico. It's going back to the civilizations that existed there, which you know nothing about. You only know it as a kind of a word, Tara, as it were, when Federal Judge Hugh announced it, that it's no longer a theoretical framework. Yeah, these civilizations exist on paper and in building form as well. Okay, so that's one I wanted to share with you. There is another channel, that goes into quite details, although they're very philosophical. And because I'm a Chief Federal Postal Court judge and a plenipotentiary judge, I have a great deal of insights into how these things work, and plus I can do professional research because my court system runs on that. So in that sense, I know exactly what they're talking about, but without me bringing in any of the mystification. This is a particular thing I did for my Israeli students on the tricks and traps, when I told them, look, the lease on Israel is a state, it's not a territory, is running out. That 99-year lease has run out. As a result, they're going to try to kill a lot of people to get them off the land. Otherwise, they're going to have to find space for them. And that means the owners of Israel that own that 99-year lease on the feudal lord systems will have to pay for resettlement. Yeah, it's called resettlement. So because of that, the vaccines are pushed on there in Israel at a phenomenal level. These are all things that you need to know. Because if I have hired, a vast piece of territory in England, and that belonged to a chieftain there, and I only have a 99-year lease, whatever I build on it, I have to get my money's worth. And any tenants that are on there, I have to relocate them. Or I find a clever way of killing them off. You understand what I'm talking about? Of course you do. Look, the double speak or new speak under the Orwellian system, George Orwell was a lot more insightful than you can imagine, because he was part of an inside group of open declaration. He wasn't the long-suffering academic. Yeah, these people are all put in place to be able to educate you on a conscious level, partially, and to fully educate you on a subconscious level. Because if you lie to the subconscious mind, if you lie to the genie, it'll pop out. Yeah, it'll pop out. And how you're going to stop a man that is in full possession of his thinking and his physical body? Just think about it. So try to overcome by just finding out what these words mean. What does survival mean? What is the etymology of the word? It means no life. Yeah, just as if I said to you, I'm going to go and see a therapist, you're not going to think twice about it. Yeah, and it was one of my students a long time ago that loved explaining it to me. You're not going to think twice about it if I say I'm going to go and see my therapist. Oh, Mark's got a therapist, fantastic. But what I've essentially said to your subconscious mind is that I'm going to go and see the rapist, because that's what therapy means. It means the rapist. Instead of going to see a physician, you go and see a doctor whose job is to make money for the pharmaceutical. A physician is to get you better and well. That's his contract. That's the one that says, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. That you shall do no harm to no man or woman, not human. You can do whatever you want with humans because that's what human means. Just like survival. Humans believe in survival. Humans believe in all manner of these things. And all that is about degrading, removing their ability to see that which is obvious. Now, we have Tara Australis here. This is not a theoretical word. They have maps and they are contracts, all written in these languages, which you don't get to see about because the general public is not aware that the houses that they're sitting on are death pledges, which means they are pledges to death. Yeah, it's called a mortgage. That's why my court system can remove the world's mortgage systems. We put the feudal lords in their place. The Federal Postal Court has the ability to remove all mortgages on this planet. But you, the citizens, have to come to us. I say citizens, but you have to come to us as men and women. This, ladies and gentlemen, is an opera that took place, published, 17th June 2021, a few months back. And it's called Tara Australis. They're singing in the rebirth, as it were, of Tara Australis again, because the lease on Australia has run out, and they're celebrating it right in front of your face in the Sydney Opera House. I don't know if I play it, if you're able to hear it, but certainly I will post this onto the comment section. They're singing it right in front of you. Tara Australis. I ain't got a opera voice, but You see where I'm going with this? It's in your face, ladies and gentlemen. And in tomorrow's live broadcast as an official capacity, as a planned potential judge, as a chief federal postal court judge, as well as a master for Washington, D.C., I will be revealing one of the biggest frauds that has been taking place. And I'll be shutting that down. And it will be a bigger moment, just as me saying, well, the terrestrials are back. Not the extraterrestrials, but the terrestrials are back. The civilizations that built your world, the technologies that they left behind, they're back. And the Olympians are dead in the water. Look, this is some of the professors that already know about geopolymers. And they're preparing the world to use this technology again, as to opposed to toxic furnaces that burn bricks, that create ash out of chalk in order to make lime or cement. Yeah, these technologies are dying. And I am not just restricting myself. I'm not just restricting myself into the level of technology that is going to be coming your way. You know, you have battery cars and stuff. These are primitive technologies, ladies and gentlemen. Primitive. And, you know, things like Tesla. If I go too much into it, it can be too overwhelming for the general public, as it were. So what I'll do is I'll end it by saying, for the first time in about 150 years, the veil of darkness that we've been living under is opening up. The sackcloth that was over our head, from which we saw the world as a haze, is lifting. The haze around people's minds are lifting. You know, you will be told by professors and these scholastic wankers, really, is what I would say. The polite diplomatic word is masturbators. They will convince you that the 2% have some extraordinary capacity. Well, I'm the Chief Federal Postal Court judge on this planet. There is nobody, apart from my court system and the members in it, that can do what we do. And I promise you, none of us take up this title called extraordinary. You will be told that the 2% are so very gifted. What they themselves do not follow to conclusion is that, yeah, sure. Sorry, once again, the system's just told me to shut it down. It's just telling me to shut it down because the connection is lost. I know that's a lie. It's this kind of things that distract me occasionally, but I'm getting wiser to these things. You'll be told, yes, that 2% do have extraordinary abilities insofar as they have the ability to execute. But they themselves, in sports, in literature, in music, and whatever it is, don't claim these things. And yes, in modern day art, and it's just mediocre. What I'm getting at is that in our culture, in economics, banking, politics, it's all a lie. And the people that lie the best and the most convincing make it to the top. What these professors fail to take into recognition is that, yeah, the 2% do end up with, this and that. But it's also the 2% of the best liars of the liars. It's the 2% of the banking. It's the 2% of the families that lie, cheat, rob, so on and so forth, because they are that 2% that have become exceptionally good at what they do. That is to lie, cheat, rob, murder, rape. And that is the history of the Committee of 300, the Olympians. That's the gods that you worship. Yeah. Worshipping books instead of getting on with things, having faith. That's what worship means. It means war on a ship. Yeah. Human beings that do book worship will never be able to see geopolymers. They will never be able to realize that the old civilizations are back. They will never investigate how a cell phone works or even what cobalt is in these phones. As long as you can take control and be in possession and take ownership of what comes out of your mouth and the words that you use, even simple words like is and the, survival, thrive, therapist, all of these words, you got to know what they mean. If you don't, you'll just walk yourself into geoengineering. Okay? So, on this, new year, I'm really, really looking forward to being the recipient of these wonderful technologies that were taken from us by these Olympians. And also for the Federal Postal Court to put them in prison, because this is beginning to happen now. The Tony Blairs of this world, the George Bushes, they're answerable. Yeah. And when the things that they have done and the level of toxification that they created and the warfare and the men and women that died as a result are all punishable. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Please watch those videos that I'll post on the comment section. I have no affiliation with them, but I wish to promote people that have brought such wonderful pieces of news to us. Most of them are self-funding, just as I am, self-funding. Yeah. And in the next coming few days, I'll be asking for patrons to support the Federal Postal Court so we can speed up the process of going after these people that stole, lied, and so on and so forth. In this new era, we can't have those type of people, those legal fictions, those toxic people follow us into this corona period. You would never openly open your doors and allow into your nursery a liar, a cheater, and a rapist. And so it is that we cannot allow them to accompany us to this corona period. They have to be put in prison. They have to know there are consequences for doing what they did. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.